Hello everyone and welcome back. We are back at it with the B-1B, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a lot of the lumps and bumps and antennas and such on the entire fuselage. But first we're going to be using the bone fragments antenna set or lumps and bumps set. The only thing that we are not going to be adding today are the pitot tubes. On the very front here, I have the holes drilled out. I'm going to paint those separately, just to make painting them a lot easier, because I'm going to use like a metallic color to paint those right there. But on the rest of them, we're going to start from the front and work our way back and then flip it over and do the same thing. We also have the Barracuda cast lumps and bumps, the external upgrade set that we need to add on as well. There are a few antennas on here that are repeats that we won't be using for this set. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing that we need to do is we are going to say goodbye to being able to see the Wizzo set back here and get this hatch glued on. And today I get to use my God Hand cutters, which I've used them before. I just broke the last ones I had, being an idiot. And these things just cut absolutely gorgeously, like butter. So we're going to get this done, get this cleaned up real quick, and then we'll get this put in and we can start doing all the antenna work and everything on here. So alright, so that is in. It is going to take some putty work to get that fixed and acceptable. Take care of that later on. Yeah, so the holes that are drilled up out here are set for these pitot tubes. And on the pitot tubes, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see these, hopefully. They have a nice large core that's going to help strengthen the connection point for these. So they're not so easy to break off with just a light little breeze that can break off some of the pitot tubes on some kits. So that is I'm really looking forward to attaching that later on. But first, what we need to do is we need to start attaching antenna on here. First we have GP1 on here, which I believe is going to be this guy right here. So we're going to have to sand that off, or cut it off and then sand it down to very, very thin. Or I'm supposed to cut that out. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this sawed off and then sanded, so we can get this taken care of. Alright, so for this one, if I would have realized what we were doing beforehand, I would have cut this area out before gluing the fuselage halves together, because there was like a support area on the back side of it. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to sand this down to be paper thin on the back end, so I can just glue this flat onto here. Now on the next ones, what I'll do is, like for the top side, I will cut out the area, but on this one I'm just going to have to sand it down to where it's paper thin, and then we can glue it down that way. Alright, so now I think we got this thin enough to attach onto here. We're going to check it and see. And yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to sand it down to where the only part left is the dome. So I'm not liking how that was sticking up. And then we'll just grab the square panel around it. So now let's give this a try. Getting this glued on. Next up we have an antenna that goes right into here, which I think doesn't really tell us which ones are which. Okay, so the front section we need is all done. Alright, so we can put that off to the side for now. And now what we're going to start doing is working on the back section. Now, we have a vent that we need to attach, but I don't see it in this kit. So I'm going to start digging around in the box, seeing maybe if it fell out in there. So I'll be back in a couple of seconds. Alright, so we don't have the vent included in this. I don't know where it went, so let's see about possibly scratch building one. So I get some things moved out of the way here. I know it needs to be about right. Is that panel molded into here? Nope, of course not. Yeah, it's about right here. No, I think it goes more. Okay, we're gonna let that fully cure, and then we can cut off the spare plastic around the edges. So we gotta let that dry for a little while. Up next, we can start working on getting this area cut out for this antenna right here. Go ahead and get this one cut out. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how that vent came out. Pretty simple. Just add some more glue to really get those edges in. Alright, so that part is done. Now we're moving on to this other SATCOM or GPS antenna that we need to add in. I already got the whatchamacallit, the casting block cut off. So now what we can do is we can start with getting this measured out. So no. Now you can see the difference between doing something right and doing something wrong. This was obviously done the right way. Just a little gap on the edges right here to fill, but that won't take much. And then on the chaff and flare dispensers, you can see the wrong way to do it and how much of a mess that made. and how much cleanup we're going to have to do on that. So the difference between doing it right and doing it wrong, right there, right next to each other. So up next we have another set of antenna to add. Actually, I think we need to fill this antenna. Make sure I don't spill my glue. Yeah, we need to fill this antenna right here, and then we're gonna go in and we're gonna add another antenna right, looks to be right here. And then we have two side antennas that go on the side, and then we'll have a couple more antennas that go on the back right along here. And then another one right here, it looks. We're slightly back from that. Alright, so just figuring that out. Now we get to do, we'll repeat with this. I think it's the wider one. This one that fits into here like so. We're gonna go with this one. So I gotta get that solid off, and then we will Dremel it down to the very edge. So it's just this part up here, and start getting this fit into the plastic. Get a little bit of putty and sanding right on here. We got a little bit of a lip, but like on this side it's nice and flush. Maybe if I move it over just a wee bit we can minimize the step, but that one's done. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of sanding and a little bit of putty to get that to work. Looking pretty good so far. Let's keep on moving on with these antennas. I'm going to try to finish with the top side antennas before... Oh, we got plenty of time. Plenty of time. Alright, so up next we have the two side antenna that go right on here. What we're going to do is we're going to measure distance down so they're the same on both. Alright, so all the antennae are done on the top side, right here, and the sensors and flat flare and shaft dispensers are all done. So up next, what we have for this part is getting ready for the wing glove area. So that's going to be another step, and that's going to be probably on the next video that we do for that. So I'm going to put that section off to the side, and then we can start working on the underside right now. So we only have two antenna add to this underside right in here. Let me bring this over. And these are a little bit easier to read where they go. So the landing gear, the problem is I can't read the numbers on them. We do know that the orientation of this bottom piece is like this. So we have number 2 that goes over here, and number 5. Alright, so it's this one and this one that go on here. We'll do this one first. We'll get this one prepped. We got to drill a hole for the actual antenna. Let's clean this resin up real quick. The casting area. Move this off to the side while we file, so we don't get a lot of dust in there. Alright, so those two antennae are on. Alright, so now we have the Barracuda stuff to add on. These are going to go onto the sides, right around here or so. Not 100% sure right now. And then we have this piece that goes on the underside right here. Then we have a couple more antenna and such to add on. And just going by what we have here. Alright, so we already took care of those two antenna, and those two antenna are already taken care of, so those are done. Don't need to worry about those. Alright, and then this piece goes right behind here like so. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get these situated first. Then we'll work on the bottom piece. And then we will be done with this part, it looks like. So, let's get this cut off. Alright, while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and get this piece ready. So that way, because I'm going to go off camera and do the Dremel work on the underside here to get this smoothed out. So that's what we're going to do after I'm done doing all this work. Alright, so I'll be back in a second once I get the Dremel work done and get the undersides smoothed out on this so we get a nice flush fit. Alright, so first we got the port, which is this guy. I'm going to get him lined up right like so, and from the looks of it, perfecto. Alright, so now we're going to add just a dot of super glue and spread it around a little bit so we can we have a little lip here that we need to press down on. Alright, so that side is done. Now we get to do this side. Get this area cleaned up of dust. Just repeat the process on this one. Alright, so these are done. As you can see right there. Now we get to do this one right in here. This one. Alright, so we got that done now. Now we need these two antennae that go on the underside. Alright, actually, trying to figure out where these go. Alright, so 6 and 7 go right about here, I'm guessing. So one on the center line, so 7 is on the center line. this one goes on the center line right about here. And then 6 will go right about here. Okay, so those are all done. Now, the only thing we have left to do on this tail section for now is the little vortex generators that go along here. So I gotta see if the kit has those in the photo etch. Alright, I had to do a little bit of a mid-build bench clean because there's just so much dust and everything from all the resin that we were just working with. Then I checked the instructions for the vortex generators that go along here, and there's no mention in the instructions about that. Luckily, I do have the Edward exterior set for this kit, and that does come with the little vortex generators. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna go ahead and get the bases for the generators all put in, and then we'll come in and get the actual vortex generators placed in as well. And then it also has places for static discharge ones right here. What we're gonna do, instead of using the photo etch for that, we're gonna end up drilling tiny holes in the edge or trailing edges of all that. I still have some sanding to do along here and putty work, but I'm gonna get a tiny drill bit. We're gonna drill the holes into there, and then we're gonna feed some lead wire in for the static discharge wicks on this kit, because we have back here on the rudder, and then we have some on the elevators, and then we also have some on the outer edges of the wings as well. So, but first up, what we're going to be doing is getting all the photo etch bases cut off for the vortex generators. Grab my tile out, and we're going to go ahead and cut all these off. Right. Also, what I might do is I might go in and let's see, because that vent that I had to scratch built, I think there's a photo etch piece for it. I'm looking for it. Doesn't look like it. Alright, so back to our original tuning. Alright, so that's enough for one side. We're going to go ahead and get the first side done first, and then we'll work on the other side. Alright, so with this, I am going to need to break out my optivisor and also my fine point tweezer. Two tools that if you haven't started using them yet, or if you don't have a pair of optivisors, I highly recommend it. You will definitely wonder how you built without them once you have them. And also a pair of fine point tweezers. I have mine from Anyz, ANYZ. They are, I love these fine point decals. The tension on them is just perfect. They are a little bit pricey, but they are worth it. And they are very fine tip. I cannot find my optivisor. Let me guess, you guys see it, but I cannot see it. I love when I constantly am looking for something and it ends up being right next to me. I love when that happens. Alright, so we're getting the instructions back out, and we're going to see exactly where these go. So we have two. Actually, let's check the reference book first before we get into the instructions, because the instructions on Edward are not always accurate. So give me 1 second, find the book in my library, and we'll check the reference. Alright, so we're going by this reference book. This is the DACO Publications Rockwell B-1B Lancer, edition 22. And if you are building a B-1B and you want it to be accurate, I highly recommend this book. There's so many photo reference pictures in here. Definitely worth the money. Alright, so now we're working, I guess these are not vortex generators, these are ECM antennas. So we're going to go through, we have 3 on the side, right along here, versus what the Edwards set has us as, I think that's 6 or 8 on going all the way up. So we have 3 on the side here, and then we have 2 rows of 3, and then 1 straggler on the back here. So we're going to go ahead and do it like that. Alright, so those 3 are done. So we got 3 more that are basically right in line with these 3. So we're going to go ahead and knock those out first. But these are also at an angle. Alright, now on to the other side. We're just going to repeat. Alright, so both sides of the bases for the ECM antennas are done. So now we get to cut out the actual antennas. I really wish they would have used 3D printed ones instead of these, because these are turning into a pain in the rear end. But when this set was created, 3D printing probably wasn't an option. And of course, nobody else has come out with one yet. Alright, there's one side all done. And have I mentioned yet how much I dislike photo etch? If I haven't yet, guess what? I don't like photo etch. Especially now that we have 3D printing. I think photo etch is going to be obsolete, or should be obsolete. Alright, so that's all of the photo etch done. All the antennas are added. So we're going to be calling it quits for today. And this is going to be the end of part 3 of the B-1B. Now next week what we'll be doing is we're going to be working on the wing root area with the 3D printed wing gloves for this. And get those attached, and then after that I think we're almost ready to start attaching the fuselage parts. So we'll have to see where we're at, but we're making some major milestones here in the very near future for this build at least. So I do want to get some sanding finished on this, mainly right along here, and then on the underside we have a bad seam right here, and then all along here. Then also we do need to fill all these panel lines and kind of make them a little bit smaller, because they are a little bit oversized for what we're going to be adding on later on with the res kit intake and exhaust set. So we need to make everything match somewhat closely on that. So that's where we're standing. Like I said, next week going to work on the wing glove area or the wing root area and get that done, and then I think we're ready to start gluing fuselage bits together. So I'm really getting excited for this. But anyways, thank you for watching. I will see you guys next week on Wednesday for part 4 of this. If you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell button for notifications of when I post future videos. And again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.